The Minnesota Vikings play a meaningful football game on Sunday. Get excited. Odie's excited. He's right next to me sleeping. He's that excited about it. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about a lot of different elements surrounding the Minnesota Vikings, the potential injuries they could be dealing with at wide receiver, and much, much more. The wait's almost over. There's NFL football on tomorrow night and Friday night, college football day Saturday, and a full slate of NFL games on Sunday. Strap in, everybody. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top left corner, he is producer Dave. You know, ever since you moved from the top right to the top left, I have not missed the finger point. I have not screwed that up. Hey, you know what? I have a way to remember it. You want to know how? Left with the left hand, right with the right hand. I know it's pretty simple, but you know what? It works. So we're going to go with it. Welcome, everybody. Minnesota Vikings play a meaningful football game on Sunday afternoon, and we are here to talk about it. They take on the New York Football Giants. Why are they called the New York Football Giants? Well, there used to be the New York Baseball Giants before they moved out to San Francisco in the 1950s. So you had to differentiate the two with the actual word of the sport. So we're going to talk about the game. The game kicks off at noon Central Time from MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And unfortunately, we have to listen to Jonathan Vilma call a football game because he will be teaming with Kenny Albert to call this Minnesota Vikings game. Dave, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you that we're about to see a Minnesota Vikings football game that means something?
At about a 12. I can't wait. This is going to be a blast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Anthony's saying I'm all dressed up like it's pictured in high school. Dog, this is just a quarter zip and a white T-shirt. I ain't dressed up worth a damn. I'm gonna tell you that much, but I appreciate it. We got 20 people in here right now. Listen, tell your friends. We're going to have a good time tonight, and we're going to have a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, we're going to tell you a couple times tonight just to make sure you know, tomorrow we're going to be doing a super show with everybody from Vikings First and SKOL, including a big announcement with a new member of the staff. We will not give their name away, but they will be on the show with us, and you will find out. I'm going to call it a big acquisition, Dave.
I think so, too. I think we won the offseason.
We won the offseason just because you haven't killed me yet. That's winning the offseason. But we did win in a big way with this one as well. And we're really excited that you guys are all here tonight. We're going to talk about the New York Football Giants as I try to do my best Howard Cosell voice.
Is that what that was? Game. I wasn't sure.
No, well, I mean, I was trying to do it in the way of Howard Cosell, but I can't do a Howard Cosell impression. Like, I am a relatively smart and talented person. I ain't that good. Let's talk about this in kind of a big picture, and we'll get down to some nitty gritty. I found it really interesting looking at the injury reports. Vikings only have 2 players. Jordan Addison, limited with an ankle. Jalen Naylor, limited with an ankle. And the fact that they're both wide receivers, little frustrating, but with Naylor having another injury, which that sucks. The one good thing about it, though, Dave, is it's an ankle, not a soft tissue. He's had issues with soft tissue. He's had multiple hamstring injuries, had a concussion, which I don't know. Would you call a concussion a soft tissue because it's swelling of the brain? Because brain is technically soft tissue. Not in the same sense, but I think like concussions are bad. So it's just another thing for Naylor. And right after he had a tremendous offseason in training camp where we presume he won the wide receiver 3 job. We do not know that for sure because the official depth chart had him listed as a second team wide receiver with Brandon Powell. So one of them is wide receiver 3, one of them is wide receiver 4, but we don't know for sure who is who. And Norsefius, so they're hoping that what he said was that they're hoping to have him practicing fully by the end of the week. I think they believe he's going to go. I think he's going to go, but I don't believe he said that he should be good to go. Maybe I'm misremembering, but he explicitly said they're hoping to have him practice in full by the end of the week, which I think is a good thing.
And I thought I heard Doogie say that Naylor, they said it was just minor, not a big deal. He'd be ready.
Well, let's be real. Anytime there is an injury with Jalen Naylor, Dave, I'm going to worry about it. You know why? It's Jalen Naylor.
Well, anytime
Jalen Naylor,
coach or the team says, it's just minor, not to worry about it, I worry.
Oh, yeah. I am absolutely going to worry because it's Jalen Naylor, and he's never stayed healthy for longer than a couple of weeks in the National Football League. So we have to have that kind of cautious optimism if you're going to have any kind of optimism as far as his status is concerned. But if the Vikings can't have either one of those guys, let's look at the worst case scenario. You're going to have Brandon Powell as your wide receiver 2, and you are going to have Tristan Jackson as your wide receiver 3. That is awful. That's awful. Like, look, is it going to be an abject disaster? No, but it's going to be significantly harder for Sam Darnold in his first start. He spoke to the media today and seemed to be really excited about the opportunity, which, I mean, who can blame him? He's got a great infrastructure surrounding him, but was also honest about his time in other spots and feels comfortable going back to New Jersey, which I thought was really, great to hear. That he's not worried about going back to his former home. And Dave, I'm really excited to see Sam Darnold. We'll kind of start there at quarterback. Darnold is a very, very interesting player because there's a lot of talent. And it's never been about lack of talent with Sam Darnold. It's always been about execution. It's always been about what's been around him. And can he take a situation that's been gifted to him by the Vikings and make the most of it and become 2004 Drew Brees? That's my big question. And if you don't remember me talking about it, 04 Drew Brees was in an interesting spot. He was the starter. He was the first pick of the second round in 2001. And then the Chargers took Phillip Rivers they took Eli Manning first, and then they traded him for Phillip Rivers, who's taken fourth. And Rivers was the presumed guy. Well, then all of a sudden you have Drew Brees, who breaks out and is a Pro Bowler. Like, well, what do? We have a quarterback in waiting. We have a guy who's playing at a very high level. How do we handle this? They ended up signing Drew Brees to a franchise tag contract. And then I think it was week 15 or 16, he tore his labrum and rotator cuff trying to recover a fumble. And his arm kind of got flipped back like this. It was ugly. And he ended up leaving, signed with the New Orleans Saints. The rest is history. But that element, I think, is a really important one to distinct from, because if Darnold has a great year, what do the Vikings do? We want to have J.J. McCarthy as the quarterback of the future. We want him to have the job right away next year. But if Darnold is good, why not keep him? Now, there's other ways to kind of think about this. You have the salary cap. It's not like Sam Darnold would come at $10 million again next year. If he balls out, you may have to pay him 40. Geno Smith got 25. My guess is if he balls out, 25 to 30 million is probably the range of the contract that he would get per year. But if you franchise tag him, it's going to be in the 40s. So that's kind of what we're having a conversation about. And one of the difficult parts about moving on from Darnold, if he ends up being great in this offense, it's a hard thing to say no and move on from a good quarterback, especially one like Darnold that is young. We're not talking about a 36-year-old Kirk Cousins coming off of a torn Achilles. We could talk about that until our faces are blue. We have talked about that until our faces are blue. But if he balls out, it'll be very hard for the Vikings to just say bye, even with JJ McCarthy in the building, because it's very, very, very difficult to say no to a good quarterback. And that is my intrigue with Darnold. If he ends up being really good, what happens? If he ends up being good, how far can this team go? Can this team, if the defense takes a step forward, and let's say they're between 8th and 10th in total defense and around 12th in scoring defense, they improve around 5 spots each from last year, where they were 13th and 17th. What does that mean? Can the Vikings make a run? Can they make a playoff run and maybe even challenge for the division? Challenge to be a Super Bowl participant? I think if you want to look at the super optimistic route, it all starts with Sam Darnold being really, really good. And that's a non-zero chance. This isn't like asking for a miracle where Josh Dobbs last year and playing the way he did early on, that was a miracle kind of thing. That was once in a lifetime. Everybody remembers the New York Knicks and the Lynn sanity run. That's what Josh Dobbs was. It was great. It was fun. Wasn't sustainable. We moved on. But if Darnold is good for a 17-game season with Kevin O'Connell in this infrastructure, maybe that's the real thing. And then that presents its own options. I can't wait to watch Sam Darnold in the purple. If it's bad, we understand why. If it's really good, you can easily explain it by his past circumstances and the people that he played under and with being just subpar. There's nobody else that's going to know it better than Josh McCown, who was in the same quarterback room as Darnold in 2018. So quarterback is going to be really fun to watch, Dave, because who the hell knows what Darnold is going to end up being?
I think you're putting the cart in front of the horse a little bit quickly. We need to see. That's why I'm excited to see. And if something like that works out, great. We'll deal with that problem. But for now, let's get through game 1 and then game 2 and then game 3, etc. Take it game by game and see if the Vikings can uphold and that defense improve and Sam Darnold's improved and he can handle the pressure, because there will be some pressure. Every offensive line gives up pressure. And see how he does.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily putting the cart before the horse. I'm just talking about potential outcomes. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Sam Darnold is going to be great. I think he's going to be a good starting quarterback. I think he's going to be above the level of what we saw post Kirk Cousins last season, where I think he's going to give you the high end of what Nick Mullins was in the first half of that Cincinnati Bengals game, where he was going to be the first half of that New Orleans Saints game. But I think he's going to give you a little bit more of that than what we saw from the other guys last year. But I do think it is a downgrade from Kirk Cousins. I just think the idea of what Sam Darnold could be has never really been realized. And that is the intrigue about this season. Anthony McDaniel says, so JJ will miss physical development. Are we going to throw him into the fire in 2025 without a vet QB to develop behind? I think that the Vikings, depending on how he does mentally within the room this year, I think they're just going to throw JJ out there and be like, yep, you're the starter. You're the starter during the offseason. You're the starter going into the year. And we're going to treat you like the starter. You're going to get all the reps like the starter. And I think that if you end up choosing that path and moving on from Sam Darnold, which, let's be real, is a very likely possibility, I think you bring in some form of veteran backup. I don't think you bring in a veteran to contend with him. If you believe he's the guy for the future, you don't bring in somebody to challenge him. That's not a good way of doing business. That's not showing that you have confidence in this player. Now, if you believed, hey, I don't know if he's ready, like this year, he wasn't fully ready. He was showing a lot of positive signs, and we talked about all of it. I don't think he was ready to start week 1 based on everything that I had seen. But I also think that he could have played and been fine if he started from week 1. And I think if you have a guy like Darnold to challenge him right away as a rookie, I think that's good. If you believe he's the guy moving forward, you don't bring somebody in to challenge him again in year 2. That would just send mixed signals, and I think that's a bad idea for the Minnesota Vikings to kind of do. I think you're going to have a Mullins type backup next year, like a Chase Daniel. Chase Daniel made like $50 million in the league. All he did was hold the clipboard except for like 6 or 7 starts. And one of them was a win against the Minnesota Vikings, believe it or not, when he was with the Chicago Bears. I just think Darnold is really intriguing. And every possible range of outcome is on the table for Darnold. You name it, it could happen. And going into the Viking season, that's why I'm excited. That's why I want to see what's going to happen, because anything can happen. This is going to be a weird year. This is going to be a fun year, and it's going to be a year that is defined by oddities, by development, not necessarily by wins and losses.
That, and believe it or not, this will be the best offensive line he plays behind.
That's also wild to think about, Dave.
I know, that one, shocking, but it is.
Yeah, the best offensive line, best group of weapons, best everything, really. Maybe not the best defense, but it's fascinating. The rest of the offense is also fascinating. We talked about a lot of factors ad nauseum. Offensive line, we've talked about. I've been having people trying to gaslight me saying Ed Ingram is bad. I won't believe it. Ed Ingram is not bad. He's inconsistent. You are mad because of PFF grades, not watching the tape. And that's why I challenge everybody. Watch the tape. NFL Plus is kind of good now, which is wild to think about because it was such an atrocious product for the last few years. Go watch the film. And even if you feel like you don't know what you're watching, that's okay. Sometimes I feel like I don't know what I'm watching. Like it can be that kind of that weird barrier. Oh, hey, we're honest on this show. Like you learn by doing, and you learn by asking people smarter than you questions, which is what I do all the time. And you will figure out a lot of these things. You will figure out that Ed Ingram isn't bad. He's inconsistent, and you'll see why real quick. But we won't talk much more about him. I'm excited to see Blake Brandel get the starting gig because coming out, I thought his really his only major issue was dealing with speed on the outside. Dave, you don't deal with that at guard. So I'm very intrigued to see what he does. But we have a question from Nick that I find interesting. Can McCarthy come back at the end of the year, or does season in the IR literally mean you can't play? It was because of when he was placed on IR. So here's how the rule is stated, Nick. If you are placed on injured reserve before cutdown day, your season is over. Or you can come to an injury settlement with the team. They pay you a bunch of money, and then you have to sit out X amount of games, which is what your injury is for. So if you like severely sprain your MCL and you're out 8 weeks, and the team doctor also agrees that you're out 8 weeks, he'll be like, hey, we'll give you 8 weeks worth of pay. Then you can come back to whatever team you want to in week 9, and you can continue on. So you can do that. Or they can just sit on injured reserve for the year. That's what they're going to do with JJ McCarthy. And yeah, it kind of stinks that he can't return, but it's best for him long term. This is always about a development year for him and the franchise, and continue to bulk up the roster. So yeah, he can't return. I think that's fine. The most intriguing part about this offense, other than Sam Darnold, Dave, the run game. I've had a lot of thoughts about the run game. I know you have too. And my biggest thing has always been, it's not that Kevin O'Connell doesn't want to run the ball. He doesn't trust the guys running the ball. So he defaults to passing. And I think he has a guy that he can trust now in Aaron Jones. I also think that he's getting more trust in Ty Chandler. I don't think he completely trusts him. I do think Ty Chandler's probably going to be the guy next year that's the starter. But I do find it very interesting that now that they have players that they perceivably can trust, now you have positives on the outside. Like, I'm really, really intrigued by it. I'm really, really intrigued to see. Oh my goodness. I'm not even tired. I don't know what that was.
Stop that.
I'm
You
really
think if Aaron Jones has a good year, they're not going to keep him next year?
I really don't know. The contract is set up for them to keep him as long as he wants to keep playing. But he's also about to be 30 years old. And depending on what Aaron Jones wants for a contract, they may decide that he's not worth it. Just eat the $3.2 million in dead money and move on. Because if you sign him, it's a free signing if you give him $2.4 million, because there will be no change to the cap whether he's here or not. So that's an interesting part of it. But I don't know if he's going to want to stay. I don't know if the Vikings are going to want to keep him. And I think that's part of the intrigue here, because he played really well last year. He looked really good. And he was the most efficient he'd ever been. His success rate was a career high 62% as a runner, but he only ran 142 times. So you're not expecting him to come in and be a bell cow. He's never really been a bell cow. He always split time. Now, he was the lead guy for Green Bay, but it never really felt like he was an alpha. They always had a beta with him, a 1B. And I think that that's probably going to be the situation here. I'm projecting 60% snap share for Aaron Jones, 40% for Ty Chandler, where it's a split backfield, but there's a true 1 and a true 2, which is what Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler are already projected to be. But having that kind of split, I think, is a good thing, because it allows Jones to continue to stay healthy. And he has a pre-practice and pre-game ritual where he does a 30 to 45 minute warm up to get his body loose and limber, because a lot of the injuries he's had have been soft tissue in the legs. So they're working on some of those things. And I don't know if the Vikings will want to keep him after this year, but I feel like Kevin O'Connell's going to trust him, and that's going to improve the running game. But I also think they're going to utilize a lot of mid zone, inside zone, duo, counter, pin pull. They're going to run a diverse rushing attack, but they're not going to rely on wide zone, which is what we have been accustomed to seeing over the last, 6-7 years. This isn't a wide zone football team anymore, and I think that's good.
Since Zimmer came on board.
They weren't wide zone until Pat Shurmur took over. Then they really started to do wide zone. With Adrian Peterson, it was more power runs. He liked gap stuff where, hey, hit this hole and blast.
Yeah, he preferred that.
He liked running behind the fullback. That's how guys like CJ Ham have continued to be on the team for years. But Ham has evolved his process over the course of the last few years to be a more diverse player.
We get a question from Seti. Are you worried about the Giants' speed on offense?
Nah, not really. I need to see a proof of concept from Malik Neighbors more than kind of what we're seeing right now. I haven't seen enough to show that he's going to be a true difference maker for this team. Why? He's a first-round pick. There is no proof of concept there. There is only a idea. And outside of that, where is the speed coming from? Sterling Shepard is gone. Darius Slayton is there. Slayton, that's all he does is run, and he's not overly fast. He's fast, but he's not we're not talking Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle kind of fast. Wan'Dale Robinson is more shifty than fast. I'm not super worried about the speed. I'm more worried about Daniel Jones beating us with his feet. The one thing about Brian Flores' defense is it's hyper aggressive. Against a guy like Daniel Jones, you have to think about it. They're not the same player. They're not the same level of explosiveness. You have to think about it in similar ways to Michael Vick and Lamar Jackson. You have to play contain while also trying to generate pressure. And that is very difficult to do. Watch anybody try to get pressure on Lamar Jackson. Because if you get one edge rusher that goes too far upfield and that B gap opens, guess what? Lamar Jackson is going to be like, thank you. And he's going to run for 10 to 30 yards and just get chunks. You can't do that against Daniel Jones because he is athletic and fast enough to beat you with his legs. And he wants to beat you with his legs. He is more than comfortable doing that. So you have that. You have all these other elements. How are the Vikings going to get pressure whilst keeping contained? I want to see that. I think that is going to be a huge storyline in dealing with this Giants team. There's no Saquon in the backfield. Devin Singletary is fine. I like Eric Gray a lot as a backup, but I also don't think he's this massive difference maker for your team. They really like Tyrone Tracy Jr., the rookie from Purdue, who's a former wide receiver turned running back. But the speed, it doesn't move me. Now, if Malik Neighbors turns out to be like the next Justin Jefferson, all bets are off. But he's a rookie in his first game, and that's the kind of guy you want to play in his first game. A rookie wide receiver who's got traits but doesn't have a ton of nuance yet, and I think that's Neighbors.
It's going to be interesting, and you got 3 wise old corners on our side that are going to go up against him. So,
yeah. All right. One more reminder for everybody. Please like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell. Ringing the bell is going to give you the notifications when we go live or we have a video posting, because sometimes we got to pre-record and that kind of stinks. But we live, we learn, we make it work. And we're going to have a show Thursday night, 6:05. Book it. 6:05 Thursday night. If you're listening on the podcast feed, you can join us live too on the YouTube channel. Otherwise, they will have it out as a podcast on Friday, and we are going to have an all-network show previewing the 2024 season with the debut of our newest edition. And they are really excited. We are really excited. And we are not going to tell you who that is until it happens. It's very, very exciting. And I think you're all going to enjoy it. It's a different twist on what we like to do here, because there's no sense in hiring people who are just like us. We want to bring on people who are different and give you more for, like, well, not your money, because you don't have to pay us, but you get more for your time.
but
And
we
I think that's a
appreciate
good
you
thing.
when you do. If you
Yes,
sign up for a
absolutely.
member. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Let's continue on. I think another thing I'm interested in kind of taking a look at, Dave, is tight end. Because listed as a starter was Josh Oliver. I'm going to pull up Pro Football Focus because I need to look at the splits of whatchamacallit, the end of last year with Johnny Munt and Jalen Naylor. Or sorry, Johnny Munt and what's his name? Josh Oliver. I don't know. My brain is just fried. You know what? It's because you made me yawn.
Oh, is
It's
that
all
it?
because you made me yawn.
Chris Thompson says, please be Annie Yeager. Please be Annie Yeager. I would love to have her on Who Will Be King as our representative for that team from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But, I don't think
and-
we can quite afford her.
No, and I don't think she'd want to be on a regular contributor on a Vikings podcast network. Let's be real here.
It'd be fun, though. God, it would be great.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. OD boy. Ooh, you stinky.
Speaking of that team from Wisconsin, he's adding to their fragrance.
Mm-hmm. All right. So normal snap share was Hawkinson played around 70% of the snaps, maybe a little bit more. The Vikings had 53 snaps against the Lions. Munt played 41. Oliver played 24. And looking at week 18, Johnny Munt played 55 snaps, Josh Oliver 39. So kind of what you're seeing, and we'll go back to week 15, which was against the Bengals to give context for Hawkinson. Hawkinson out of 68 snaps played 59. Josh Oliver played 35. So the one reason why I'm interested in tight end splits is because they're listing Oliver as the starter, but I don't necessarily think Oliver's role is going to change. Oliver's role is he is the blocking tight end. He is the extra tackle. And Munt is just theoretically going to slide into the TJ Hawkinson role. So I'm curious to see if that's going to change at all this year, especially because the Vikings have had plenty of time to figure that piece out, to figure out if they want to have a different method of going about it, if they want to prioritize using Josh Oliver in a more diverse role. I think that's going to be interesting to kind of watch and something that I'm going to be fascinated by. And the other thing I'm going to be really fascinated by in this offense before we kind of shift to talk about the defense is how the Vikings are going to handle the front of the New York Giants, because it all starts and ends with Dexter Lawrence. He's the best nose tackle of this generation. He's like, what, 325 pounds, and he had like 49 or 50 pressures last year. As a 0 technique, 1 technique. That's brutal. That's insane production for a guy that big. You see that from somebody like Kevin Williams, who was a 3 technique. You don't see that from a nose tackle, but he's not a traditional nose. And he's arguably the best thing that Dave Gettleman did for the New York Giants is taking Dexter Lawrence. We made fun of him a lot, and he earned a lot of that. But that pick was tremendous. And I'm really intrigued to see how the Vikings are going to combat him. Are they going to do a lot of double blocks? Are they going to try and let him upfield and then wham block him? Like maybe they bring in Christian Darrisaw for some wham blocks. Dave, that sounds like fun. Get a split zone action and wham block Dexter Lawrence out of the play with Darrisaw's powerful hands. I think that's going to be the key. But there's also Brian Burns, who just got traded to the Giants. They signed him to a big deal. And then Kayvon Thibodeau's on the other side. So what are they going to do? How are the Vikings going to handle that front? I can't wait to find out. It's going to be a really, really interesting dichotomy to see how they maneuver everything.
I concur. It's going to be a challenge. It's not, I mean, it's both defenses, I think, will have the edge because they usually do first part of the season. And we'll see which offense overcomes the opposing defense. But you're right. I'd love to have a middle 0 tech, 1 tech that could do that. That would be.
Well, Deion Walker is going to be the guy that you're probably going to fall in love with, Dave, or Kenneth Grant from Michigan. Those are big boys that can do things athletically. Kenneth Grant, I think at 350 pounds, has a track GPS time of 18.89 miles per hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
that
moving.
boy can move. That's real fast.
Too.
Yeah. Defensively, I think the most intriguing thing, thank you, SKOL Mafia. And he asks, is anyone attending SKOL Fest? We are not. To my knowledge, we were not invited to SKOL Fest. SKOL Fest being a place of a lot of like Vikings podcasters and stuff. The invite was not
have
extended.
a representative there.
Yep, but the two of us, to my knowledge, we were not extended an invite.
I was.
At least I wasn't. You were?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't. So.
But we will have a Vikings first-hand representative there.
You'll find that out tomorrow night. And if you want to find out, join the show live, because that's going to be the only way you find out. George is like, if Odie farts, the Vikings win. God, I hope so. He likes to do that a lot. And kind of speaking of the Vikings, I'm curious how the front seven is going to look. How are the Vikings going to utilize this defensive line? Let's be real, Dave. The defensive line is a major question mark for this team. You have Harrison Phillips, who's a stalwart player, but I don't want him to be my top defensive lineman. I want him to be on my roster. The Vikings are paying them as a defensive lineman on the roster, not a defensive lineman that you want to be your lead dog. And I think that's one of those intriguing elements where are they going to be able to piece together this patchwork unit? Jonathan Bullard is a fine player. He's a great DT, he's like great D lineman 4. He'd be the first guy I'd want off the bench. Jerry Tillery, I don't know what to think of Jerry Tillery. All this ability and has never really been able to put it together. He's almost like Sam Darnold on defense, but instead of being taken 3rd overall, he was taken like 29th by the Chargers. He's got athleticism, but he just doesn't play with the amount of strength and size that he has, which I find kind of frustrating. But we're going to find out what he looks like this weekend because he is not on the injury report. Remember, he got that massive gash during practice that had him carted off. People thought it was going to be this big injury. I mean, it was a significant laceration that required stitches. That's not nothing. But it's also not, what do you call it? It's not this massive thing. If you want OD prediction, I'll figure out a way to do it. Okay. I'll talk to the wife. We'll maybe put a couple treats on the floor. Speaking of Mr. Odie.
There he is.
There he is. He's a good boy.
He just looks up while you're bothering me.
Are you ready? Odie? Oh yeah, he's out. The word he usually responds to the word ready because I usually use that like, hey, we want to go outside or go potty. He usually perks up at that word. So I was hoping he'd perk up for you guys, but he's tired. It's been a busy day around here. This is like my 4th hour of audio I've recorded today. So we're rocking and rolling, baby. Anyways, I'm excited to see what the defensive line is going to bring. I'm intrigued to see how that rotation is going to come out with like Levi Drake Rodriguez and Jalen Redmond and Taki Taimani being the backups. Jonah Williams is on the practice squad. He could be a call-up. Vikings get 2 call-ups each week from the practice squad. Myles Gaskin, we know it's going to be 1, but they could do a second. Would not shock me if it was Jonah Williams week 1 and they wait on putting him either Redmond or Taimani into the game right away.
Is Myles Gaskin going to be 1?
They pretty much already said it in a press conference.
Crazy did
or last week.
And then KOC said no. Ty Chandler is going to be back there, or not KOC, but
no. They said Gaskin's going to be RB3.
Okay,
that to me signals that a call up, and the reason why they're waiting is because of the rule with the veteran contracts. Or if they're under contract in week 1 and you go through week 1. Their contract becomes fully guaranteed. It's not guaranteed if you sign them to a contract after week 1. Vikings did a similar thing with Gaskin last year. And I think that's important to note. The Vikings plan on paying him a full contract, but they want that flexibility. And from a business perspective, yeah, it makes complete sense. From a player's perspective, that sucks. Because now you have to worry about, well, how much money am I really going to make here? Are they just going to cut me because they find something else? Like, that's kind of the nature of the business end of the game. It kind of sucks for the players. Now, they're making it a crap ton of money, but at the end of the day, security matters. And like when you talk about Jamar Chase, I think he wants security because T. Higgins didn't get any of that. And he saw what happened with Higgins, and he doesn't want that to happen to him. That's why I think he's pushing for that contract right now, because he wants to play with Burrow for the long term. And who can blame him? Who can blame him at all? But that's a whole nother story. We also get the debut of Blake Cashman, and we also get the debut of Dallas Turner, Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, and a cornerback room that is absolutely loaded with older guys who have a good floor. Not a high-end cornerback room. This is a patchwork room after losing Kyrie Jackson to that car accident and losing Mekhi Blackman to the torn ACL. They had to do what they had to do. They brought in Stephon Gilmore. They brought in Fabian Moreau. If all would have went well, they wouldn't have had to bring in either of those guys. And Jackson and Blackman would be big players in this room, and it would give you a path forward for the cornerbacks. But right now, we don't have a great path. A lot of people I found think Caleb Evans stinks, Dave. They think he shouldn't even be on the roster. And I'm floored by that because he was a quality starter for the majority of last year. Now, was he great? No. But he was a capable starter. And that means something in today's football, especially at corner. So I think, especially going to year 3, you don't want to give up on a guy like that.
I agree. It's just a shame that what happened with Kyrie. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Blackman. But we'll have Blackman back next year.
Mm-hmm. And his knee injury happened early enough where the 12-month mark will be the beginning of training camp. So he should be like ready to go. Anthony mentions Dwight McGlothern. I don't think McGlothern dresses for this game. He's cornerback 6 on this roster, which is fine. Like, it's not an insult on McGlothern. I would prefer he didn't play much at all this year because it's going to help him develop and you're not going to get him overexposed and maybe shatter his confidence. So I would prefer he doesn't play until he's absolutely ready. And I think you can afford to do that when he's cornerback 6. So we'll kind of see how that ends up working out. But I'm intrigued to see what this defense looks like. Brian Flores had these guys running a lot of heavy pressures with zone behind it. They ran a lot of Tampa 2, rushing 3. How much of that is going to continue this year? They kind of got torched with it. Dig routes for days just annihilated this defense at the end of last year. So what changes are coming? What adjustments are the Vikings going to have going into this year? I don't know. I'm fascinated to watch because that's going to be a big thing on my radar is how the Vikings handle this. And we'll find out. I think the safety room is just as good as ever. Harrison Smith is probably playing his last year in the NFL and his last year as a Minnesota Viking, well, obviously. The contract he signed kind of looks like a guy who's ready to retire. And you know what? It's been a hell of a run. Good for him. He kind of gets to play one more year, go on his own terms. And I think that's kind of, there's a beauty in that, Dave.
I agree. I look forward to him. Hopefully he lays it all out. Yeah, more than he always does, because he does. But I do. And when he gets rest snaps, I like seeing B-Flow uncomfortable as he's standing by him on the sidelines.
They did talk, I think it was B-Flow yesterday, had a discussion about Harrison Smith and how many snaps he would play, because one of the things that he said was, we had a plan for him to, not play every snap last year, and then he played 98.9% of them. So we have that plan again. We'll see if it works. I mean, some of it is just due to Harrison Smith. Some of it is due to kind of throwing out the plan because of game flow and how things are going. And you know what? Why take him out if he's playing well? But he is 35 years old. It might be a good idea to kind of, pace him a little bit. And you have Theo Jackson, who is a starting level safety sitting on your bench. Maybe you take him out for 20 snaps a game, give him to Theo Jackson and build him up. Because you know what? If you're going to run 3 safeties next year, Jackson's one of them. And that wouldn't be necessarily a bad thing.
It's real simple. B-Flow goes over to KOC and says, hey, run up the score. Let's get 3 touchdowns up so I can pull Harrison out of the game. Simple.
The Vikings haven't won a regular season game by 3 scores since I think the Miami Dolphins in 2018? Was it that long ago?
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time since they won by 3 scores. 3 scores is just 17 points. So we're not even asking for like a massive blowout. The Vikings just haven't really been a team to blow others out. They've been a team to win. And I think there's a lot of elements that kind of go along with that. It goes, we won't kind of dive into that. But overall, I think this game is going to be really fun. The Vikings are 1.5 point favorites right now. And that's with the home team getting a 2.5 point advantage. So neutral field, the Vikings are a 4 point favorite, 6.5 points at home. So the Vegas thinks that the Vikings can really win this game. I think the Vikings can really win this game. I saw somebody wrote a piece about how this was a must win for the Vikings because of the schedule. I think that's a bunch of crap. Every game is a must win, and it's not because of the schedule. It's a must win because there's 17 of them, and it's very difficult to make the playoffs when you lose football games. So that's a whole nother thing. But I'm really excited, Dave. I think this Vikings team is going to be a good team. I don't think they're going to be a great team. I do think they're going to be an entertaining and fun team. A team that you look forward to watching every single week, even if the results aren't good. We haven't had that before where, hey, if this team ends up being bad, we don't want to watch them. No, we want to watch this team. I think this team is going to be really engaging, entertaining, and I think that's objectively a good thing for us.
Now, my hope and goal is that once we hit December, we're still competing for a playoff spot. That will be a successful season.
I think there's a real possibility that ends up being the case. Because, well, think about it. If the Vikings win 7 games this year, unless they are 4-10, they are going to be that team that is still alive in December. Last year, they were alive in December. They blew it, but they were alive. I think the Vikings win 7 or 8 games. And, I'm not a hater. I think they're going to go above their win total. I've gone on a bunch of shows saying, hey, I think this team is being undervalued. But I also don't think necessarily that they're being undervalued to the point where people are completely sleeping on them. Northview, you got a question? Throw it in. I'd love to answer it. I think this team is too talented to be actually bad. And the only way they're actually bad is they're absolutely destroyed by injuries. God forbid you have all your superstars go out and then you have to just piece together whatever the heck would happen. Last year, Cousins went out, Jefferson went out. You still had Addison, you still had Hawkinson, you still had Darrisaw and O'Neal. What happens if those 4 guys also went out? It would have been a disaster. And I think the Vikings could win anywhere from 6 games to 10. Nothing in that range would be too surprising. I think if they went above or lower than that, then we have an issue. Why are they going lower than that? Why is that happening? And I think then you're going to have deeper problems if you're going lower than 6. You got to answer some questions for me. Norris Fias, what do I think of FSU quarterback DJ Yui? My God, I can't throw today. He means DJ Yui Angalale. Look, I think, Anthony, you're going to want to close your ears for this because this is just the analyst in me talking, not the Florida Gator fan. It was really dumb of Florida State to think that they could bring in DJU and fix him after being in college for 4 years and nobody else was able to do it. That is, any coach who does that and has the mindset of I can fix him needs to have somebody in the building that tells him, no, you're an idiot. Don't do it. They put the entirety of their season on DJU. It was a dumb idea. They're paying for it. If they had a capable college quarterback, if they would have got Cam Ward from Miami, they're 2-0 right now. That's the difference. DJU stinks, and it sucks because the idea of DJU is great. He's built like Dante Culpepper. He's got a cannon of an arm, is mobile. He's just a bad quarterback. And it's unfortunate. And he was a 5-star recruit at Clemson. His first start was during the pandemic against Notre Dame. Went into South Bend and lost by 3, 41-38. And he was great in that game. So he was kind of crowned early as hey, this guy can be the next big thing. He wasn't. But yeah. I hope DJU is starting when the Gators play him in November. Because, good Lord, I need it. I need it bad. This Florida team is going to kill me this year. So I don't know if I can deal with the Vikings being bad and the Gators being bad. It could be really rough for me. I might have to start a GoFundMe just to make me happy again. But yeah.
Oh, well. He could be Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Oh, don't get me started on the Gophers and PJ Fleck. Fleck needs to either evolve his offense or leave. It's pretty dire in Minnesota right now. It sucks. But
did Iowa score more points?
Iowa scored 40 against Illinois State, but they still scored 40. I'm really intrigued to see a lot of different things here moving forward. Minnesota Vikings, good football team. I'm very, very happy that they're back. I'm excited to see what they do. And Dave, we're going to be here tomorrow. GMAC, you're a Vols fan. Hey, you've been here a long time with us, GMAC, and we appreciate you. There is not a team in the world that I dislike more than the Tennessee Volunteers. So you and I will have to agree to disagree there. I dislike Tennessee more than I dislike the Green Bay Packers. And I know that might be sacrilege to say in this program, but
that's bad.
That's very bad.
Yes.
I'll never forget, and it's weird because I think the only reason why the Gators lost the game is in 2001. They lost 32-30, and that cost the Gators a shot at a national title. That 0-1 team was loaded. Was because the Tennessee game got moved because they suspended the week after September 11th. And the way things shaped up with both of those teams, the Gators roll over them in September. But because so much happened for the Volunteers, they were able to get the win. And I'll never forget that 0-1 team and Travis Stevens for that 200-yard running performance. I'll never forgive him. I will never forgive him. That should have been a national championship for Steve Spurrier, damn it. But alas. That's going to be our show. Chris says he can verify that it's true that I hate Tennessee. Chris and I used to be roommates, and he and his our other roommate Ethan would play on my Amazon Echo. They would tell the Echo to play Rocky Top, and then they would sing it themselves. I wanted to kill both of them. It was bad. GMAC, I just told you why I hate UT. 2001, 2001, 98. I think 2000. 2016 was the weird years where we were whipping your butts at Neyland, and then all of a sudden you came around. Dennis, I do not hate them because of Manning. I hate Manning because of Tennessee. Different. You got it flipped. I've never been a big Peyton Manning fan.
Okay.
Yeah, that took a really weird turn. That's one of the reasons why we love our chat. We can have kind of weird turns. Have not seen Gary here to have our little pizza corner lately, though. We miss you, Gary. I can only do so much food talking without the chat talking about it first. That's why we had this nice little turn talking about college football for the last 5 minutes and me reliving painful memories of Tennessee winning in 2001. That'll be the show.
Remember, tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. The Vikings First and SKOL Super Show.
Big announcement at 6 o'clock of the newest member of Vikings First and SKOL. They are excited. We are excited. You are going to be as well. It's going to be a nice change of pace for what we offer here at Vikings First and SKOL in a good way, because we don't want to hire the people that are exactly the same. GMAC, we love you too, man. Thank you very much for joining us. And make sure if you liked it, like, comment, subscribe. Send to your Giants friends, because we're going to have a really, really fun week this week. And I can't wait. I cannot wait. This is going to be a great time. And the Minnesota Vikings play a meaningful football game on Sunday afternoon. Anthony McDaniel, we're going to wrap with this, says at 58, he has never watched a college football game. Oh my goodness. You are missing out, my friend. College football is way better than the NFL. I love college football. Here's the thing. The average NFL game is better than the average college game. There's nothing better than a great college football game. Absolutely nothing. You don't get atmosphere like that in the NFL. You don't get like a lot of elements of college that you just can't get those in the NFL. It's special. And plus, college stadiums the bigger ones seat like 105,000. Outside of Jerry World, very few seat over 70. It's more about the experience than cramming a bunch of people into the stadium. And there's something special about cramming 100,000 people into one space, let me tell you. Thank you guys very much for joining. We really appreciate you. We'll see you tomorrow night during the Super Show. And as always, Two Old Bloggers is back on Saturdays. Make sure you mark it in your calendar. We've been trying to beat you over the head with it, so you don't forget. Saturdays. Saturday. And then we'll be here after the game on Sunday as well. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. Thank you guys very much for joining. And SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!